Hello and welcome to another episode of the WEM Video Academy. Today we are going to have a look at consuming a web service. Web services are web-based interfaces between applications and services on the internet. For instance, between a mobile application and a database server or between two WEM applications. The WEM platform offers a no-code implementation for building and exposing web services. Exposing a web service means providing functionality or data to online services requesting that information. Requesting information from a web service is known as consuming a web service. Think of an exposed web service as a shop, and of consuming a web service as visiting that shop and buying products from it. Web services are exposed through different protocols and standards. The WEM platform offers two main features for connecting to a web service, either by using the HTTP request node in the REST standard or by consuming the web service under the SOAP protocol. SOAP stands for Simple Object Access Protocol and provides a highly programmable way of interfacing with a web service. Would you like to learn how to expose web services or use the HTTP request node? Then look for the related videos in the WEM Video Academy. Consuming a web service can be started in the blue Integration tab inside the folder Web Services Consume. Every WEM web service, as well as third-party SOAP services, can be consumed in this way. We can start importing a web service from the three-dot-context menu in this folder by selecting the option Import Web Service. We can choose a name for our service, and we can also choose how we would like to import the service, either by URL or by loading a local structure file. For WEM web services, the link to the web service section can be found in the online documentation under the SOAP 1.2 tab. The link to the structure file consists of the access URL to the service extended with the suffix /WSDL, which stands for Web Services Description Language. This is a text file in the so-called XML format, describing the structure or data model of a SOAP web service. The extended URL is called the service location. As an alternative, we can choose to upload the WSDL file as a local file. This may be applicable when the exposing side does not allow remote access to the WSDL file. After importing the web service, we will see the web service represented by a globe icon and the chosen name in the Web Services Consume folder. By double-clicking the web service or selecting the option Service Configuration, we will see the Service Endpoint Configuration and Authentication dialog appearing. At the top of the dialog, we can see and change the name and service location. Below that, we see the endpoint locations of the web service as defined for preview and the staging and live runtimes of the consuming project, meaning this project. The endpoint locations, however, refer to the web service locations as exposed in the runtimes of the exposing project. We can choose any combination here between the location of the exposed web service and the location of the consuming project, as long as the authentication methods are the same. Below each endpoint location, we see the authentication details of the exposed web service for that particular endpoint. Web services can be authenticated by a username/password combination or a client certificate. We can see that for this particular web service, the three endpoints are authenticated by a username/password combination. When we select this web service, we see an authentication by client certificate. And this web service does not use any authentication at all. You will need to provide the correct authentication details based on the authentication type. Username-password combinations and client certificates can be set for the three endpoints individually. This is how we can submit a username-password combination for this endpoint. And this is how we can submit a client certificate from our client certificates folder. Now let's have a look at how we can use this consumed web service in our application logic. First, let's expand the web service and explore its contents. We see a list of so-called operations, which are functionalities inside the web service that can be called by a requesting service, also known as a consumer. Expanding an operation shows three folders: an input folder, an output folder, and a faults folder. The input folder lists the input requirements of the web service. This is the data that needs to be sent to the web service operation in order to be able to retrieve the correct data. The output folder holds the format of the response of the web service. This data can be used directly in a regular flowchart by the consumer. Bear in mind though that all input and output fields are session fields, so the values are transient. The faults folder contains fault handling and messages. These are available as fault exits in our flowchart and can be used to process an error flow or inform the user about an error in the operation call. For demonstration purposes, we have displayed the exposing flowchart here. Bear in mind, however, that this flowchart is not visible or accessible for the consumer. So how do we actually connect to these operations? In the flowchart editor node bar inside the grey integration section, we find a node called Invoke Web Service. When dragging this node into our flowchart, we can select one of our consumed web service operations. Alternatively, we can also drag our web service operation into the flowchart directly. Let's use the content of the output folder in an interaction node to check the response of the web service. We will draw an exit to the assignment node, exit into the web service call, and then return to the interaction node. The fault exit can be used to display an error message overlay to the user, notifying that the customer ID was not found in the customer database. In the interaction node, we will drag the output customer list of the operation into the template as a data grid. The conditional around the data grid will display a message if no rows have been retrieved yet. Previewing the result, we can call the web service with the static customer ID and verify that the operation returns the correct customer details. We can change the customer ID to various different values to verify the correct results. It is good practice to always verify the security settings of the exposed web service. As a test, let's remove the password for this endpoint of the exposed web service. We will now call the web service again and we see an error message appearing about a missing authentication. This error message can be captured in the error exit of the Invoke Web Service node. We can use that, for instance, to display a dialog to the user. This is the basic implementation of a consumed web service. One thing you need to be aware of is the fact the exposed web service may change. For instance, the web service data model may be modified, or the authentication details may be updated. For this purpose, we have the menu option, Update Web Service. This option will perform a call to the WSDL file link and update it to the latest version. You may see changes to the data model appear with the suffix obsolete. This means these objects were removed from the exposed web service. In order not to break your flows, the objects are not removed at the consumption side, but marked. This will allow you the opportunity to replace these fields with the new ones. Note that updating a web service is possible only with linked WSDL files. You may be consuming a web service that is not exposing its WSDL file. At the consumption side, you will be using an uploaded local version of this structure file. After an exposure update, you will need to request the exposing party to send you a new version. And that concludes our video. We hope you enjoyed it. Please leave your feedback in the comments below and share the video with your colleagues and friends. We hope to see you soon again in the WEM Video Academy.